I'm Stephanie Fiteni, co-founder of Defined Branding and digital strategist, and today I'm interviewing David Darmanin, who is the CEO and co-founder of Hotjar. David, would you like to tell us what Hotjar is all about?
Sure. Yeah, and thanks for having me today. Hotjar is it's a tool that allows you to pretty much see exactly how your visitors are using your site. In fact, we call it like an all-in-one analytics and feedback tool. So pretty much it connects two areas. You can see exactly what your visitors are doing, how they click, how they move their mouse, where they're dropping off. But then you can also ask them questions and get their feedback. So we call it it's a solution which allows you to connect the dots, because you start to see what they're doing, what they're saying, and you get these aha moments. So, that's why I get these drop-off points, and that's why I have problems.
Right, so we're here today. When I started following Hotjar in the beginning, throughout the launch, I noticed that it was a very meticulously well-planned campaign, and I suppose that is why we are here today to talk about it. What I would like to ask you to walk us through the launch process, the way the marketing of Hotjar happened. I understand you have a background in marketing as well, David, so maybe you can tell us about that.
Just before we kicked off Hotjar, I'd say I have to start with the fact that I was working for like just over a decade as a consultant or in-house actually, on conversion rate optimization and marketing. And there was a little bit of design as well. So why am I saying that? The reason is that the tool we were building was actually a tool that I wanted to use. So it helped a lot that it was a problem that solved a lot. It was a solution that solved a lot of the problems I had before. And that helped me in a way design a campaign which was essentially designed for myself. But I mentioned also the conversion rate optimization and marketing part, because in the latter years of my career as a consultant, I became obsessed about learning and reading books by marketing strategists, about what's kind of the term positioning, about persuasion. We can mention these books later on as well, because I think they're quite useful. So in the campaign, we used a lot of these principles that we learned about. So let's start with a few of these principles. So the first one is the idea of lean marketing or lean startup. And basically what we did was we kind of wanted to sell Hotjar before we actually built it in a way. So we built a prototype and we made sure that it's possible to kind of actually build something that on these lines. And then once we saw that it was possible, we actually put up a page and said, here's what's coming. And I worked with our designer and UX guy Jonathan, to kind of make sure that it was visualized in a way that people could understand what we were going to build. And then we told everyone, just sign up for it, and kind of we'll let you know when it's available, right? So this allowed us to gauge very quickly whether there was interest and whether we could get any traction.
Excellent. In fact, I think I remember signing up for those early emails and thinking, what's coming?
And kind of the principle there is these are principles of persuasion or what influence or actually influence, as Cialdini calls it. There's a really good book called Influence. And it's what we did was that when you signed up, we created this queue whereby we'd say, you are now position 400 in the queue. Refer your friends and you can go up. And then the higher you go, there are prizes you can win. Top spots get free lifetime accounts. So we kind of gamified a little bit the process of waiting for this beta to come. And this was incredibly successful. So over a period of a few months, we had 60,000 people waiting in the queue. So which was extraordinary. And yeah, there was a lot of word of mouth. We also fueled it with some online marketing. So there's a mix of multiple things. And then what we started to do was we were also obsessed about doing really good service and support and collecting feedback. So we slowly started to invite these 60,000 people into the beta so they could test the tool, collect their feedback, and then make sure that these people were involved in the process of as we improved Hotjar. So there was we created this fan base and this community early on, which this was then critical later on for us to continue building the tool and building out the community.
Interesting. So basically, you said that you wanted to sell it before you have the tool. So at what stage did you actually have the tool? Or maybe, the basics of it?
So that's a good question. When you're building something in a truly lean way, so it's agile, it's iterative, there is no kind of shut off point. So you literally have to force yourself to say, this is the day we go commercial release. In fact, our beta was supposed to be 6 months long. We extended it for another month, but then that was the point where we said, guys, we have to stop now. And it's kind of part of our culture where we say, good is better than great, which sounds weird, right? As a company, we strive for greatness. But the problem is so many companies, so many startups fail because they're aiming for perfect or great, and they never ship, they never get out there, and they never go out and say, okay, now we have to start asking for the money. So we strive for good. Good is like the level of, so it's a difficult one to define because a lot of people in the team say, well, how do we know it's good, right? So to me, it's like, it's reached the levels of, it's acceptable, but there's still a part of it you're slightly ashamed of. So if you're slightly ashamed of it, but it's acceptable, then it's good.
It can always be better, but yes, then you fall into procrastination, I suppose, if you don't launch from the marketing point.
More than procrastination, it's this striving for perfection and worried that your users are going to see the imperfections. But really, our users don't care. As long as you're delivering value, they're happy to get maybe a not completely perfect product, as long as you're improving it constantly over time.
I mean, I was particularly taken by the fact that once you were in the beta, you actually had, the little image of the CEO and updates as things were happening. Obviously, this must have been part of your strategy. And what was it based on?
Yeah, we've decided very early on to go for a lot of, to focus a lot on transparency. We think that we're lucky that we've built Hotjar in an era where things are being done differently. And I think embracing this new age of doing business is a benefit to us because it sets us apart from other businesses who are not. So, for example, internally, I present the financials to the company, to the whole team every month. We have a one-page strategic document, which basically is a one-page simple document explaining our full strategy, and the whole team has access to this. Our product roadmap of what we plan to ship over time is public to all our users. When we fuck up, and we do fuck up, we make mistakes, and there's any downtime, we have a system where we publish an issue report in our technical blog, and then we announce it depending on the size of the issue to all our users. So it's a question of transparency, accountability, and the thing is, it's very easy to be scared of saying, oh, if I'm so transparent, we're going to lose customers, we're going to lose users. But in reality, 90% of your users are going to become such big fans because of that transparency. So it's this moment, more than strategic, it's more like cultural in a way, right? It's more, we've decided that we're going to be open, we're going to be transparent, and start looking at business more as a relationship. It's a two-way value kind of channel, right? We give value, receive value back. It's a relationship as opposed to just us building something and just extracting value. So it's this way of thinking. It is strategic though, still in a way, because it's us thinking of how we're going to be different. And we know that many companies choose Hotjar purely because we think differently, we act differently. For example, we decided very early on to invest very heavily into support and customer success. So we're very, again, transparent about that. So so far it's working out well.
Very good. And I think that does come across. I mean, the relationship building aspect is something that today you cannot forego. I mean, customer service is a big part of marketing, I believe. They are overlapping because if you don't have good customer service to follow up everything that you're trying to sell, then... And that's in fact why I mentioned it, because for me that was, having that information within the software is doing the connection, is creating a very direct relationship. Obviously, at some stage, it becomes obvious that obviously the CEO cannot possibly have so much time.
Yeah, that over time is scaled. But then we invested into the right technology to allow us to do this. So, for example, we use a tool like called Intercom. So basically, it's the chat thing within the software. So we decided very early on, we had a very heated debate about this because we had our developers saying the last thing we want is everyone being able to talk to us constantly in the software. And we were like, why not? Let's try. Let's see if we can achieve it. So we've decided for something which is not very scalable early on, but the trade-off has been like very well worth it because now we really understand our users much more and their problems.
Excellent. So you actually had a number of people doing live chats.
Well, what we've opted for, Intercom has an interesting technology in that it kind of looks like chat, but essentially it's not chat. So if you're inside the interface, the conversation is there available, so you can follow it. But if you exit from the app, any follow-up conversations go via email. But then even though we've talked via email, come back in the app, it looks like a conversation. So it's fantastic in that way. People can be a little bit disappointed because they expect us to be there ready, kind of chatting nonstop. But again, it's a trade-off, so it still works out well. And I still do a lot of the chatting then. So I'm still involved in this tool. But what's great is because since sometimes I cannot be available for long stretches of time, all these inboxes of everyone in the team are available to everyone. So someone can jump in and follow up on someone who's been waiting. So it works very well.
That's very good. That's great. So the relationship continues no matter what.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to invest in technology and systems and solutions very early on that deliver value to your users. It's very easy to get caught into this system of investing into tools that kind of please more the business. But because essentially it's always this, it's the food chain, right? We are nothing without our users and without our customers. So it's critical to think that way.
So if I get you right, the main target was to actually build a system that relationship builds from day one, where you have a close connection to your customers.
Correct.
Excellent. So how did this translate into figures? You mentioned you had about 60,000 people in the beginning that were interested. How did the launch go? How were the conversions over time?
So it was frustrating to us that there were some delays. So the biggest problem we had was the beta was the perfect opportunity for us to test our architecture and our technology to see that it could scale up. Because some of the sites that were jumping onto Hotjar were very big sites, right? So the impact would be quite big. So we were fine-tuning it. So that meant we had to delay the onboarding of these 60,000. Plus, obviously, just because you're interested today doesn't mean you're going to be interested in 2 months' time. And just because we have your email doesn't mean you're going to open the email and then sign up to the beta. So again, these are the things that as you work on a project like this, you start to realize the realities of running a project. So it's so important to have an idea and running a project where there's huge volume, because out of the 60,000, I think we onboarded around 20,000.
Which is a good percentage.
Very good.
This
Absolutely.
is an excellent percentage, yes.
Yeah, and then later on, obviously, some of the other people wanted to wait until the beta was ready fairly enough. So they were kind of, let's wait to see what happens with the beta and then we can join later. But yeah, we have some figures even around the beta. I think we had around 40,000 conversations. We had around 6,000 feature requests. And yeah, it's crazy to see how many lines of code we shipped and how many features we also launched during those 7 months. Then what happened was we have, again, a much more long-term kind of approach, because during the beta, we actually shifted a little bit our strategy as well. So whereas before the beta, we were thinking of having price points and you just have trials, seeing how many people we had engaging with the tool, using it, spreading the word for us, we decided that we would go freemium instead, which was, financially speaking, a big mistake, as in we knew it was not ideal. Reason being was that because we opted for trials, we started from very low price points. We started from $29, €29. So That works if there is no freemium. The problem is that if you have a freemium and then a very low price point as well, that doesn't work in your favor, because obviously you have a huge pool of free users, and the moment they make the effort of moving up a step, they're moving to a very low price point.
Okay, fair enough.
But
So that is
our
why.
strategy, sorry, go ahead.
So you feel that didn't give you
It's
the
not
turnover
ideal.
you were hoping for, basically.
Well, we'll come to that. We still managed to get some good traction, but the key thing here was that we decided that the community, the fan aspect, we knew there were a lot of students, people without businesses who were just testing the tool and spreading the word. That we knew it would be crazy on a given day to say, okay, bye-bye now, because now it's paid. So either you're paying or that's it. So we knew that our part of our strategy, which was a land grab strategy, right? So expand very quickly at cheap prices. The freemium model was going to work very well for us. And looking back, we knew that was a very, very good decision. If anything, our problem again are in the economics of that first level up. So right now we're in discussions of perhaps making our free plan a little bit better and phasing out our $29 plan, for example, because that was always kind of our small entry point. So it works better. And we know we have a lot of businesses who should be using our larger plan, who are using our smaller plan just because the smaller plan is there, because you step up to the next one. So there are these economical kind of challenges, which are very, very interesting. But anyway, long story short is that the life cringing moment was when we had these 25,000 sites on beta. We had another 40,000 or so users waiting for the beta to exit. And we had no idea what was going to happen, right? Are we going to have people paying? Are we going to actually survive beyond this point? So we had already built some funds internally to be safe so that we could keep on running so we were already calculating how much time can we run at this point, like at this spend we have, because we were paying salaries. So it was a
How
little
big
bit
was
scary.
the team then?
So the team at this point was only the co-founders. We were only 5 people running all of this. I was the CEO, but I wasn't being paid a salary. Instead, I was working as a consultant while being a CEO, and revenue from the consultancy was going into the company. The reason being, we knew that we had to do this right, so we had to pay salaries. It had to be done right. We can't expect people to work for 7 months with no pay, and
No,
so
absolutely.
we knew it had to be done right. So yeah, it was a really scary moment in time when we did the switch from beta to paid, but we were just blown away that during that first month, of those 40,000 that were waiting, a lot signed up and actually started paying instantly. From our beta, a lot of people actually started to pay as well. But again, everyone on the beta, we actually gave them 1 month free as well after we started, so they had to pay at the end. But it was such a fantastic moment at the end of those 30 days where the counter was just going up and we were actually more than covering all our operational costs. So it was fantastic. And from then onwards, we've just been growing 10 to 15% per month. So it's quite crazy growth. And we pretty much reached 1 million in euros in ARR in under 6 months. So the trajectory is just crazy now. So it's now the fun begins.
Yes, excellent. That's great. So how do you feel that this? You mentioned the free version as opposed to the pricing. So how do you feel the structure helped you in terms of, why would you actually have a free version, and how do you decide
Very good
what the
question.
next entry level price should be, and
That's
at
a
which
very
stage?
good
Because I
question.
believe you've changed that price. Because in fact, you do notice that after, usually after a year or two, or even longer sometimes, the price brackets tend to change when you're talking about software as a service.
So we haven't changed any prices, and we're trying to avoid changing prices because I'm not a big believer in that. So our plan instead is, if anything, to phase out one of our lower plan, and by phase out, it would mean we would do it well ahead in advance. So again, in the line with our ethos of being transparent, we'd explain the reason why. We'd say, for example, end of the year, we're going to phase out this plan. With anyone on the old plan, we would keep them on the old plan, so we wouldn't force them to upgrade. So our plan would be, again, to put our customer first, but then at the same time, we'd make our free plan a little bit more substantial. Now, you asked why. How would you decide? These are really difficult decisions. And you're right. It's extremely difficult. But the reasons which led us to start thinking in this way, so we started from the beginning, right? We need free because this is a market that's been around for a long time, and we need to penetrate it. We need to kind of grab a lot of it very quickly. So free, low pricing is very important in order to expand very quickly.
Excellent. I'm very happy to hear that that is part of the strategy, because there are two lines of thought when it comes to this. So there are people who believe in marketing that if you have the free option, then you're attracting people who will never pay for your product. So I'm very happy to hear that.
It's not the case. So we've had people on the free plan who were from huge corporations. We had no idea because they were using their personal email address. So again, the thing is, just as like any strategy in the world, like, right, no same strategy is the right strategy for everyone. So if we were first to market with a new technology, it would be crazy for us to go free with cheap pricing, right? So then you'd go very high-end pricing, and you attract some of the bigger guys because you're providing a technology which is new and high in demand. So it all depends what you're trying to achieve and in what space, in what market, and you need to adapt your strategy to the circumstances. So I think we got our strategy right. Now comes the second harder part of our strategy, which is now we're introducing higher price points for sites that have much more traffic, and introducing more pricing, what we call access. So other reasons why you can go up in pricing. So for example, the ability to record bigger volume per day, introducing new features which are on a different separate pricing axis, which allows us to then bring up the lifetime value of our customers. So there's always a different strategy, and the key is to find the strategy that's right for you, given the market that you are in.
Excellent. That's brilliant. Right. So if you could sort of simplify for us just sort of the elements that made part of this launch.
So elements, would we say more from the thought process, or would you say more like the actual material that we used?
I'm perhaps more material and strategy in the sense, okay, for instance, so you started off with a free version of the product, and alongside that maybe were list building efforts in the form of various options, for instance.
And by the launch now we're saying more extended, like beyond the beta, and how we went to market the whole over a longer period of time, right?
That's right, because it's one big snowball, hopefully.
Yeah, very true. So what's awesome is that because, and this is a key thing, right? Like, because we decided very early on that we wanted to build something that essentially is what I like to call value innovation. So essentially, we're providing much more value for a much lower price. So when you do those two things at the same time, I like to call it value innovation. So we were disruptive. We had a meetup yesterday in Malta and Valletta, which was interesting. We were discussing disruption versus innovation. So someone put this in very good kind of terminology, which is we were disruptive because we brought several tools into one with one piece of snippet code. So it was disruptive because it was a very new way of doing things. What's innovative with Hotjar is that the technology is very different. So instead of collecting data constantly from all sites, all pages, all the time, we use a different approach, which is we allow you to control the data. So it's like you have a lever in your hand. And if you want that lever to be lower, then it's sampled, it's distributed evenly throughout the day. So if you have a low budget and you just want to learn what people are doing, you just go on the lower side of the lever. and you can still get this input, and we allow you to control when to collect this data. So by doing things differently, technology-wise, we've managed to make it very cheap, and that was innovative. So by what I'm trying to say is that in a way, the core of how we did things was essentially what drove then very organically the spread of word. So then we had a lot of people just writing about Hotjar. We had a lot of people that were talking about like comparisons and whatnot, always including us. So it was the disruptive, innovative way of doing things, changing the rules of the game. So we did something very differently. And then because we provided such an awesome service, we were transparent, it made us worth talking about. So people loved us. So in reality, the core of it all was really this organic way of how we grew. So we don't have to make such a big effort to grow. And that changes everything, right? Because in my previous projects, we were thinking of employing salespeople, and you have to explain it every time to someone. And when you get this organic wave hitting you, it makes a big, big difference. But then what did we do to actually amplify this, right? To make sure. So what we did was we first off set out a roadmap, right? So if there are phases, because it's very tricky, the last thing you want to do is do everything at the same time. So you don't want to do an affiliate program, you don't want to do Google ads, like you can't do everything at one go. So we like the idea of doing a roadmap. So split out in phases where you want to be over a few months or years. And then think of all the things I can do. What are the things that I should probably do now, right now? Because then I probably can't do them as effectively 1 year from now. So since we were in a beta and we were like a really new company, we knew we had to focus more on communities, focus more on PR, focus more on the word of mouth, or getting featured on these sites that list startups and whatnot. So we said, let's focus on this, because in a year we can't do this. In a year we can do the AdWords, we can do. So we just focused on the stuff that we knew. It's quite very practical, right? So what did we do? We were quite clever about it, though. So what we did was we started to approach all these sites that are about like beta list or startup list or whatnot, and we worked aggressively on that to spread the word to the what we call the early kind of adopters, right? We want to get as many early adopters as possible. Now, why? The more early adopters you can get, I forgot the author that calls early adopters, they're called sneezers.
Yeah, that's Seth Godin.
Seth Godin. I love Seth Godin. So essentially, we wanted to collect as many sneezers as possible, and this is what we called in our roadmap. Phase 1 was called establish a fan base. So not only did we want early adopters, we wanted them to be fans. So everything we did, everything we created, every decision we took was based around this objective in our roadmap. So this worked very well. Now, to amplify this, what we did was we knew from our background, two of us are very good at digital marketing, and we've done performance marketing for a long time. So we know that we live in an age where email marketing is extremely effective. Email is so underrated right now. Social media and all this stuff is like the new way of doing things. But we said, let's look at let's leverage email, because it's still very powerful. So we knew that our key segments, our key markets that we wanted to, like more than markets, actually more personas. There were two key personas we were after. So the marketers and the designers, so the product teams and the marketing teams. So we said, where are the established existing communities that we can tap into? So we found these communities, these sites, such as Web Designer Depot or Witch Test One. So there are sites where they have thousands, in some cases like tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people in a community. And we would ask this community, listen, we'd like to sponsor an email. We'd like to kind of sponsor you so that you can introduce Hotjar to your community. And by doing this systematically, we were basically introducing Hotjar to the communities via a community leader. And this was very, very effective. So kind of in a way, we're powerhousing this word of mouth by amplifying it.
I'm very interested. So, everything you have mentioned so far has been about relationships, and it's been about creating a strong feeling between your product and the company and your audience. And it's really amazing to hear you talk about it.
Yeah, I feel very, very strongly about this. In fact, I have a presentation I gave recently, which I'm going to be now touring the world to kind of present everywhere. I'm starting next week in Romania, actually. And it's called The Rise of the User. It's basically talking about the fact that we do live in a world where everyone is now connected. There is no way you can sell anything anymore which people dislike or where there is negative sentiment. You might manage to get away with it, but you're not going to grow, and someone else is going to do it and they're going to grow. So I strongly believe in treat your employees like you would your users, and this is it's just a cultural thing we do across the board. And it's awesome because in a way we're building a tool that it then allows companies to do this, right? So it's in a way it's a really fun place to be, where it's like we're eating our own dog food. So
That's good. That's great.
And actually, to add on top of that, so another thing we did to amplify as well, which is very relationship based, we know that a very effective way of spreading the word, actually, the way I like to put it is that there are three key ingredients to spread the word in an effective way. The core thing is that your message needs to be anchored in self-interest. Tell me something that benefits me. Don't tell me something that benefits you. I hate seeing these messages of people on Facebook saying, we're looking for a new graphic designer. Want to join us? No, I don't care about what your needs are. Instead, that ad should say, looking for an opportunity to learn something new and contribute to. So it's all about this. Self-interest is key. So in our case, it's talking about now you can see how people, so if we're speaking to a designer, now you can see how people are using your designs. The second one is news. So everything you communicate has to have a news twist to it. So when we introduced Hotjar, it was all about this is a new and awesome tool. It's a new way of doing things. So news is really important. And then 3 is curiosity. So if you can have it, like the first 2 are critical, without it you won't succeed. The third is an amplifier. If you can add curiosity to it, then that works even better. So with this in mind, we knew social media was the way to go. So we created like images, parts of the interface showing like a small part of the heat map. And we said, new and awesome way of understanding how your visitors are using your site. And we had this show up in feeds. So again, this was like news. And again, this amplified, this was the basis on which we grew this, and using communities to kind of reach people. So doing these 2 things together, and then the people who joined were kind of actually then spreading the word for us, it created this kind of avalanche, as you said, effect, snowball effect.
Excellent. Very good. So this is a question I've been itching to ask you for a long time.
Sure.
What were the mistakes you've made, maybe personally or as a team, that have taught you, the right way to do it along the way?
There's been so many mistakes. Difficult to put my finger on it, but then again, overall, we did get most of it right, so that feels good. I think if you don't make mistakes, though, there's no way of knowing what is right? Because then you keep on questioning yourself. I'd say the one big mistake we made was not to invest much earlier in building a dev team, because now we're feeling the effect of it. It takes, like, if you start investing today, it's going to take a year to have a productive, bigger dev team. So that was our biggest mistake, and also not realizing that length of time, how long it takes. So we're a little bit naive. That is definitely our biggest mistake, and it's affecting us a little bit now, where we're moving a little bit slower. We're now kind of addressing this, but it's just a little bit too later than what we wanted.
Okay, so however, in terms of marketing, was there one move you think you did too early or too late, or that maybe you should have done but didn't do?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question.
Or even worse, you did it, but it was a flatliner.
Yeah, those are not many big mistakes that we've had. We we have tested, we've invested a lot of money into projects that just completely failed. So for example, we tried doing an ad on a very popular site, which just didn't take off, and it was quite a big investment. But again, we're not too worried about that. If the overall investment is still giving us a good ROI, we don't worry about that. Those are the least things we worry about.
That's right. So
I'd
you found banner advertising wasn't very good, or was it just a particular place?
It was just a particular place and a particular audience and a particular approach. Although I must say that banner advertising just doesn't work, unless you can manage to make the banner, again, a conversation sitting within a site which appeals to the audience, and it doesn't look like an ad, then it's not going to work. Unless you're a huge brand and investing into brand is important to you. If not, it's probably not going to work. So I'd say our biggest mistake looking back, and this is debated, right? But I think we interviewed our users to understand what is it that they love about Hotjar the most. And the key thing, and that's why it's our key positioning statement on the site, is all in one. We've solved this problem of so many tools in one. So I think the mistake we did, and it was partially because I was desperate, having failed from other projects, is that we did too many great things at one go. So it's all in one, it's $29, it's free, it's like it was too much. And that led maybe, and some people are going to think I'm crazy, it led maybe to too fast growth. So we've experienced a little bit too fast traction. And that's put a lot of a tremendous pressure, technical pressure, on a very small team that we didn't grow early on. So perhaps some of that stems from our over-aggressive kind of value proposition earlier on. So there's two things I would have done probably, which is I would have been less aggressive with the pricing and put much more effort into the pricing, thinking that through, evaluating kind of the market and how it should sit there. And the second, rather than just doing a beta whereby I had a early access program where I just collected emails, I would have actually collected payment details of people.
Okay.
So I would have said, if you're interested in this, put in your card, you can try it for free, and then at the end you can choose whether to pay for it or not. So it would have been a much better filter it would have allowed us to, again, have much more higher quality conversations because there would have been less people, and it would have allowed us to focus on working with the people who are really interested in the tool as opposed to just... And again, this is a double-edged sword, right? So we would have done this, we would have grown much slower.
That's right.
But I think right now I would have... Right now I would sacrifice, yes. So right now I think I would sacrifice a little bit of our growth for a little bit quality earlier on.
But do you feel that would have perhaps got in the way of the initial success?
It would have, and it is a pivoting point, right? Either you hit that traction or you don't. But I think based on the feedback we get, the raving reviews from people, we actually have people telling us it's just way too cheap. You've gone overboard. So in a way, when you look at what we've done, what we've solved for, it's maybe a little bit crazy how cheap we've gone. So it's having said that, no regrets. And I think it's easy to overthink pricing as well. So simplicity has its value as well.
Excellent. So are you now going to add the form for the free version?
No, we're not.
No. No, okay. It's too late for that.
Yeah.
Excellent. In terms of social media, you've used some pay-per-click ads, I believe, and
No, actually, we haven't used pay-per-click at all yet. So that's still a frontier we have to go to. But we have done paid advertising on Facebook.
Okay, fair enough. And how did you feel that worked for that sort of product?
It worked well. It can be difficult to find the right kind of audience, and it does burn out excessively quickly. Because so it's much more, I'd say, a tool they use early on to reach an audience very quickly, but it's maybe not that scalable. And this is where now we're going to start moving into more paid networks. But the thing is, again, because we're growing so quickly, we've literally had to stop all paid because our organic growth is already incredibly fast. And with the paid, we just couldn't keep up with the pace. So now we're just making final alterations to our architecture. And then at that point, we are pretty much infinitely scalable horizontally. So then we can start doing paid as well.
So then, wow. So then you grow even faster.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes.
Right. I have one last question for you, which is obvious, coming from me, because one of the main things I do is blog and teach others how to blog and strategize and that sort of thing. You've launched your blog, if I'm correct, after the launch, when you felt you were kind of already established. Was this again another relationship building tactic? Is it how does the blog fit into the company strategy now?
I'm really glad you asked that question, because no one has ever asked me that question. Like, why didn't we use blog? Why didn't we use content? I felt that everyone was doing this. Like, everyone is doing the content approach, right? So I felt that given that we're building a complex technology product, we'll be doing is writing content as well. Instead, I wanted to focus all our content around announcing the product and training people within the tool about how to use the tool. And I'm glad we took that approach, because we're different than other companies. However, now that we've launched the blog, we see the blog more as less of a relationship thing and more of a thought leadership thing. So for us, it's less is more with the blog, and we're very premeditated about what we write about. So our plan is to write more about how we do things ourselves at Hotjar. So I think it's interesting to share the Hotjar way. And then again, a lot of content around like interviews, webinars, like again, around how we're doing things and our users sharing their stories as well.